Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Money Mindset Hub podcast. I'm your host, Carla Townsend, and I'm a money mindset and success coach for female entrepreneurs. And today I have the most beautiful guest, Rach Jobling, who I had the pleasure of being around for the last, probably four or 5 months now. And it's just been phenomenal just to get to know Rach. And I can't wait for you to hear about her and her story and also her incredible wisdom. Rach is a functional nutritionist, ex-gym owner, and a women's health advocate who is dedicated to supporting and empowering women to address the root causes of hormonal imbalances. She's also a mum of 4 with years and years of experience working with thousands of women to support their health and wellness journey, which she blends science-backed strategies with practical real-life solutions. She's definitely known for her no BS approach and passion for education. She simplifies the complexities of nutrition and hormone health to help women thrive at every stage. Welcome, Rach.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
First of all, let's just go back a little bit so people can understand you and how you got into this space, because you did actually open up a women's gym at one point. And I just want to know what got you into this as being a nutritionist. Tell us a little bit about you and your story.
Absolutely. So, I guess my journey started after my second child was born. She came along, and there were so many women like myself that didn't have anywhere to train that had childcare. So, I recently trained to be a PT, and I started doing group fitness in the park. And all of a sudden, we had like 20 mums and kids, and it was incredible. So, as the year went on, we needed to find a location. So I was able to access an incredible gym and start running programs there. And as the years went on, we moved into bigger and bigger venues, which was incredible. We started to bring in things like reformer Pilates, and I created this signature program for mums, which I absolutely loved. It was a postpartum program. We collaborated with women's health physios. We had clinical Pilates instructors involved, yoga instructors, we had childcare, all of the things. I absolutely loved it. But what I kept seeing was burnt out women who were training hard, but still struggling in terms of energy, mindset. They might not have had the changing body composition that they wanted. They might have still been having bloating and inflammation. So that is essentially where my journey started in terms of the interest that I had in nutrition itself and also the hormonal link. So I was like, what's happening here? And then I guess as the years went on, I started to get really burnt out running lots and lots of high intensity programs, and I started to see changes within myself. And then COVID hit, and we kind of had to go inward, and it made me reassess everything. And I was like, my journey is nutrition. It's always been nutrition. It's always been hormonal links. And I was like, I'm meant for more in this space. So as we welcomed our twin girls, child number 3 and 4, I decided to go back to uni and complete or follow on from my initial degree, which was in a Bachelor of Health Science, and go through and do a nutrition degree. And that's, I guess, what led me here in a nutshell.
And can we just take a moment to appreciate the fact that you just popped out twins and then went, going back to uni.
I was breastfeeding twins while just smashing out a uni degree, as you do. What else? Plus, we moved towns that year as well because, we didn't have much on. So just thought we'd move towns, go back to uni, have some baby twins. Yeah, life was good. It was busy.
Oh my God. You know what, though? I can appreciate that, because I feel like, too, for a lot of mums listening, that the moment you become a mum, you realize that you can do so much more and you can actually maximize your time, because you realize after you have kids how much time you did have. But it seems to be like, all right, challenge accepted. Like, I'm not going to lose myself in motherhood. I still want to pursue my passions and my purpose. So you'll just find a way to do it. And I appreciate that so much, because I was still doing a diploma of financial counseling when I was pregnant and then had my newborn, my third, and was on the calls with my newborn baby because I refused to fall behind.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, but you get it done, don't you?
do. And I did the same after my first, I think I was 3 months postpartum on maternity leave, and was like, I'm going to do a Cert 3 and 4 in PT and fitness. Just because I was like, oh, what else would I like to do? I think some of us that just love that learning, and we do feel like you can do motherhood and other things. Like, there's nothing holding us back. We can do both, with some parameters around it and with some support, obviously. But there is so much that can be done in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you shut down the gyms then, Rach?
Yeah. So when COVID hit, we were actually thriving at that point. We had all of our signature programs down pat. We were running strength and conditioning. We had the reformer Pilates. So we hired out all of our gear and I started training clients from my garage. So in the middle of COVID, I was homeschooling 2 kids. I'd get them all set up for school, run out to my garage and run online PT and group fitness via Zoom, which was pretty incredible. So everyone just came in and kind of grabbed all of the equipment, took it home with them, thinking it was, there was, at that point, it was new. It was kind of like, oh, what's happening here? No one really knew. We were still kind of had no comprehension of where it would go. And we were located in Bendigo at that point. So we we're regional town. And so, yeah, we just moved everything online, which in all honesty had always been one of my goals. I'd always considered going online. So COVID came along and that's what we did.
There you
But
go.
the reason we gave up the lease was because it was due as the months went on. Come June, we just found out we were pregnant with the twins. And at the same point, the lease was due to be renewed for another 3 years. So I knew at that point, with 4 children, prior to that, my husband had been FIFO, so he'd traveled a lot for work. I was like, I can't do this on my own with 4 children, including twins. And so I decided at that point that I would close and had intended to move into a smaller facility and just run my signature program.
Yeah, that's incredible. I feel like that's incredible that you actually just trusted that knowing of what's really right for me. And we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording, but that trusting your gut and really listening to yourself and looking within yourself to know what the right answer is for you. So I do want to talk about too, because I know that you have, obviously this is what you're passionate about, is the hormones and seeing that link between hormonal challenges and the burnout that women often face. And you and I were obviously in a couple of spaces together. So we saw this conversation come up quite a lot. And even with that peers and things around this burnout cycle. And I don't know whether this is just a pattern that you get into when you become an entrepreneur, but you just like, you hustle really hard. And then all of a sudden, because you've got all the ideas and you're passionate and it's thriving and everything's working, but then you end up burning out because we actually forget about these common things that we need to remember. So what do you find, especially with the women that you work with? What is the thing that's actually leading to the burnout firstly? And then how do they stop that?
Absolutely. Look, there's 2 different areas to this. So in business owners, I see this a lot. And I guess I have my own story around that back in sort of 2018 when I was again running the business. I had 10 staff. I was running 10, 15 classes a week, 2 young children. My husband was FIFO. And I feel like there was 2 streams of that. As a business owner and a mum, we're often trying to do all of the things and running on a couple of cups of coffee and 4 hours sleep. And for a long period of time, we see, prior, I don't feel like that's as much these days, but for a lot of women coming through now, we see like lack of sleep being a really big factor that contributes. And often, the combining workload of both women these days who are back working in some capacities full time or even, part time. Plus, we have the competing events of children and their school things and after school things. And particularly something that I'm starting to see more is what we call the stress superstorm of women late 30s, early 40s who have the combination of younger children as well as aging parents. Then you throw in work priorities, then you throw in their own businesses, and it's an absolute recipe for burnout. They're trying to do all the things. When you see that Barbie meme where she's got the mascara coming down and it's like me trying to drink my water, get all my exercise in, do all my work, drive my kids places. Like, it's so accurate and it does describe the stress superstorm that is women in the 21st century.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree. I think there is a lot more. I don't know whether I want to say a lot more pressure because I obviously wasn't a mum back generations ago, but I feel like there's a lot more expectation now from parents and you've got to do this and you can't do this. And then all these school things, like I don't even remember me going through school having as many things on as what my kids do now and things. coming along, and then that being within the households and that going into school. So there's not just necessarily the pressure of what you place upon yourself, but it's also the pressure of your children, and they're having conversations with their friends and what their families are doing. And then the expectations kind of just continue to flow on.
Absolutely.
So it feels like this, it's often linked to being called like the rat race. You just feel like there's this never ending rat race. And you just,
Absolutely.
at the end of every day, you just go, oh my God, thank God it's over.
Absolutely. But something else I didn't mention, the flow on from said rat race or the stress, whether it be the financial stress, the physical stress, the time related stress, we're seeing these raised cortisol levels in many women as a result of all of the things that they've got going on. Then we see limited sleep or depreciated sleep. So all of these little factors are contributing to what is already happening in terms of hormonal changes. And in many places, it's depleting these women further. And so that, again, is something that's contributing such a huge amount to burnout in general.
Yeah. So let's talk about that cortisol, because I feel like for a lot of us, women and mothers, often both, but I feel like you just get used to operating at a certain level. And so every day, you sort of feel the same. I'm definitely speaking from my own experience right now, but I always sort of feel the same level of energy or lack thereof, even though great sleep, drink a lot of water, eat really well, exercise multiple times a week, all non-negotiables. My kids sleep well. Like, I feel like there's no reason to feel this tired all the time. But I mean, obviously you and I have spoken about autoimmune and things, and that's something that's under the surface for me. And
100%.
maybe you actually have something to say on that too, but around like the linked cortisol and autoimmune and things like that you're noticing. But what are women supposed to do, I suppose, to even reduce their cortisol if they don't even realize that they're operating in such a high level of stress?
Absolutely. So this is a huge one because I will often ask women to rate their level of stress. And what they'll say is, oh, I'm not really stressed. There's not really anything going on. It's a 2 out of 10. And when we start to dive into the things that are happening for them, it gives off a different story. So what we perceive as stress sometimes is determined by our upbringing. So the way that we are conditioned to manage stress, to deal with it. I know for myself, I didn't perceive myself as stressed. I was busy, but I was also sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night. I was smashing down caffeine in the morning first thing. I was probably living on adrenaline, through high intensity classes through the morning, rushing from one thing to the other. But was I stressed? Well, no. If you ask me, no, I wasn't. And this is the standard response we get. So in terms of what they can do is start to really sit with themselves and listen to their body. So, are you experiencing increased heart rate? Are you struggling to get to sleep or waking often through the night? So there's often a few little, I guess, signs that can determine whether perhaps you are under more stress and your cortisol levels are higher than what you recognize. And so something that I'll often ask them is, break down your day and what are you actually doing for yourself and what time do you allow for yourself? And, how do you perceive XYZ, all of the things that they talk to me about. And as we dive in further, we start to recognize that there are factors that are increasing their cortisol levels. And it might not be always external stresses. So something that can increase cortisol, for example, is the morning fasting process. A lot of women are waking up living on high cortisol because they're waking up and perhaps exercising fasted, throwing down a morning coffee, delaying breakfast for a couple of hours, in which case our cortisol constantly keeps increasing. So breakfast is designed, we're designed to wake with morning cortisol, but breakfast is to break that fast and to start helping to reduce those cortisol levels. So that is one thing that is, if you started noticing yourself getting a little bit jittery in the morning, if you're, getting that brain fog, if you're struggling to fire up when you wake up, there are little signs that can determine whether cortisol is actually playing a role, not to mention things like weight gain, storage of abdominal fat, having blood sugar regulation. So, cravings throughout the day, energy, high and low, all of those sorts of things can play more into that picture of, okay, I don't feel stressed as such, but my cortisol levels perhaps are higher than I realize.
Yeah. And you're experiencing what you just explained. So, what else are you noticing in a lot of your clients at the moment that they're dealing with or that they're going through that you're helping them?
So there's a few different things. So as I mentioned, aging parents and time constraints obviously is a really big thing, but hormonal changes is obviously the biggest one. So we know that as we start to get older and hit perimenopause or late reproductive change, we're naturally starting to see changed amounts of estrogen and progesterone. And so, where cortisol plays a role here is that it, particularly in terms of progesterone, can deplete those levels further. So, we're seeing a lot of rising rates of anxiety and depression, for example. That's one thing that I'm seeing come through, and those mood fluctuations. And women are starting to become a little bit perplexed because perhaps they haven't experienced mental health concerns in the past, but they're hit their 40s and they're starting to notice, higher rates of heart palpitations and those high and low mood fluctuations, irritability. And this is where something like high stress levels or cortisol, and it's probably like a chicken and egg scenario, the cortisol levels can further deplete progesterone, or the depleted progesterone can impact on our stress levels. So that's probably the biggest
Mm,
thing I'm seeing play out right now.
yeah. God, there's so much into
So
that.
much.
So, something I do want to ask you about, and maybe this will be something that other listeners are also sort of going through, which I actually haven't shared on the podcast before, I don't think, but I have shared it with you. So, a few months ago now, it might be 6 or 7 months or so ago, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, as I told you, this autoimmune. And on top of that, have an underactive thyroid called hypothyroidism for 13 years now. But I actually started doing a little bit more research into autoimmune, and I'm noticing that it seems to be something that's really on the incline. So, do you have, like, what would you say to someone who's also struggling with an autoimmune, like Hashimoto's, for instance? What would you say is a really good starting point for them? Because the rates just seem to be going up. Where would they sort of start?
Absolutely. So, in terms of underactive thyroid and Hashimoto's, they are autoimmune, and there are a significant amount of lifestyle factors and nutrition that can support those. So, often, obviously, medication, it's always going to be a support factor, but don't underestimate the impact of specific nutrition and lifestyle. So, in terms of thyroid, it's something that we cover in my Nourish program, because what I see is so many women presenting with underactive thyroid. And because of doctors' wide range of values, they're not diagnosing them, which is when we then see it eventually turn into something like Hashimoto's. So obviously prevention is key, but being able to change things and really get knowledgeable in the areas of what supports something like your thyroid. So your thyroid determines your metabolic health. So if I was looking at nutrition to support my thyroid, I'd be looking at things like, making sure your cofactors are right. So things like your iron levels, your vitamin D, being mindful of not consuming a low carbohydrate or too low calorie diet. So something like being in a significant calorie deficit can put further pressure on your thyroid and increase those autoimmune symptoms. It's almost a reminder to pull all of those lifestyle factors, the sleep, the stress, the nutrition, the daily movement, pull all of those in and really focus on them, because it is very manageable. I have worked with many women who have Hashimoto's and both an underactive thyroid, who have been able to recover and actually come off medication as well. And I think that's one thing that many women need to understand, that you don't need to be on medication forever. If you can get in and start intervening as early as possible with those lifestyle changes, specific nutrition. It's not just about calories in, calories out, obviously, how a lot of the macronutrient focus has shifted away from that. It's starting to look at all of the things, even the toxicity levels. There are so many different areas we can go into, but finding that root cause is the first place, and then changing the lifestyle things that you are implementing on a day-to-day basis can make all of the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot that I did actually start reading about women who were getting off the medication, because it is something that, again, just from what I've researched, that they say that the medication eventually your thyroid will stop working altogether because it becomes dependent on the medication. So you can never get off it. And then all of a sudden it stops producing what it needs to. So I was told, yeah, that you'll be on it forever.
Mm.
So I find that really interesting too. And it brings a lot of hope too for myself and anyone else listening who has the same thing, that it is something that you can correct. Thank you for that. I feel like that's really
There
interesting.
is so much that can be done. So yeah, absolutely. But it is, and I feel like you're very much on top of all of that, but it's about trialing strategies and really finding out where the root cause of this is. As I
Yeah.
mentioned, looking into cofactors, iodine levels, all of those sorts of things that can determine where and why your thyroid is in this place. Autoimmune factors obviously are taking it a little bit further and can be a little bit more complex, but the strategies still remain the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. I think that's awesome to know. Thank you so much.
Very well.
I know that's going to be so helpful for everyone. So we need to think about our lifestyle factors. We need to think about our stress and the cortisol. And are we really stressed, and what can we actually do about it? And taking it back to basics is kind of the message that I'm getting from you as well,
100%.
is to stop overcomplicating it and to simplify what it is that we're doing in our day to day. I feel like it just makes you feel like you've still got the power to change things, and this is not the way it's always going to be.
100%.
So
1%, do the 1% every day. 1% better every day is what you need to aim for. Creating
yeah,
those foundations, healthy foundations that are, that you can be compliant with, that you can be consistent with. Those are the things that make the difference. I feel like so many women go to the extreme to try and do all of the things at once, and that's what tends to make them slip up many times.
yeah, amazing. So quickly, because you did mention it, I want you to actually explain about Nourish, which I know that is your signature program, and it is phenomenal. So hundreds of women have gone through this and seen incredible results. And I don't think you talk about it enough, to be honest, Rach. So can you please tell us about Nourish? Because you are the go-to when it comes to this. I have listened to you explain this stuff, and even just your explanations and your knowledge, it's just so profound.
Oh,
So,
thank you, my love.
I mean, can you please
I
explain
would
about
love to.
Nourish?
I would love to. Look, I am a very big fan of Nourish, obviously. It is my signature program. I created this program from 10 years of working with women and seeing the changes that they went through, the hormonal changes, the burnout, and all of the things. And I wanted to create a foundation for education that supports women across every area of their life. So Nourish started out with a little bit more of a macro focus. And as I've dived further into the hormone space and realized this is just too important, too big a factor, I've included so much information. So essentially, it is my go-to program for women who are wanting to balance their hormones and start thriving instead of surviving, which is what I see so many women doing as they enter their late 30s and late 40s. In a nutshell, it is a hybrid program where women come in and learn about blood sugar balance. They learn about macro and micronutrients and how they can support their energy, their sleep, their hormones on a day-to-day basis with really simple, tangible strategies that they can walk away with for life. I offer coaching through this as well because I feel like that's a really big part of supporting women. A lot of us kind of have programs that we'll purchase online, but I really want it to be a program that the go-to program for women to go, this is how I was able to support my hormones going into my 40s. And especially if you're not at something like perimenopause now, my message to so many women is now is the time to start. If I could tell my 35-year-old self to start, making these changes and, look after my blood sugar, look after my nutrient intake. I've always eaten very healthy. I've always exercised. But what I need and want so many more women to realize is that it's not just about eating healthy. It's about meal timing. It's about the nutrients that you need to support your hormones, the nutrients you need to support your blood sugar, how we need to prioritize our sleep to have a beautiful flow on effect. So yes, that is Nourish in a nut. I love it. I absolutely love it. And we're in the middle of a program at the moment with so many beautiful women who are making some incredible changes right before Christmas, the time of year when a lot of women are like, oh, I don't have time for this. They're diving in and prioritizing their health. And I'm so, so proud of all of them.
That's so amazing. And I can just tell how passionate you are about it. And I know that that is a program that's going to support so many. And like you said, it's something that you really need to do before you start to get into that phase of life because it's inevitable. Every woman is going to go through it. So if they can support themselves now, like do it for your future self,
Absolutely,
then it's going to be so much better. Something that it just popped into my mind as you were speaking, but I do see this come up a lot is around the sleep affecting your hormones because sometimes I feel like it can be kind of worn like a little bit of a badge of honor, like, oh, I only got like 4 hours sleep last night and, still went on it. But
yes.
I'm the one that gets the looks when I'm like, oh no, I need like 10. Like I need like 8 to 10 a night.
And
People are
you
like, what?
do.
I get like 4 or 5. And I just think, no, no, no. But it was actually my husband who said it to me because he researches everything. But he's the one who said that around your sleep actually affects your hormones. So it's this massive flow on effect.
Huge.
So yeah. So can you tell us about that? Because I know for some mums as well, depending on the stage of life that you're in with your kids, and if you've got little bubbers or they're still waking through the night, yes, your sleep gets affected. However, we still need to prioritize getting more because it will impact your hormones when you can. Obviously, this is very dependent on the stage that you are in. But can you just please talk about that link there for a second, just to really drive it
I
home?
would love to. And this is a really big one for me at the moment because I have been doing my own research and working with a neuroscientist in this space. And sleep is, I just can't even explain. It's the epitome of everything we need to balance our hormones, to be able to comply with our nutritional needs, to manage our cravings throughout the day, to support our cortisol levels, to support our recovery from our training. There's just nothing it can't do. But something that I really try and reiterate in my program is around the need for the quality over the quantity. So what we are seeing is a lot of women are wanting that dopamine hit of a nighttime. They're staying up later and they're scrolling because they're not getting that time to themselves. So they may be running between work and kids' commitments and things, and they're wanting just to stay up and just get that time back to themselves. But the flow and effect of that is obviously the impact it then has on their energy levels. It's then increasing their cortisol because they are depleting their sleep quality. It's very highly likely to eat around 30% more if we are sleep deprived. So then we're seeing some of that weight gain and the body confidence starting to deplete. Not to mention we're not recovering as well, or we're not moving as much because of our levels of energy obviously are lower throughout the day. So sleep is huge. I've gone through this myself with a shoulder injury this year where my sleep has been significantly depleted. And if you want to know the data, as a result of that, I saw the flow on effect impact on my progesterone levels, which is something
Wow.
that is depleted when our cortisol levels are higher and our energy is lower. And I started to see them go down because I was tracking them and getting my bloods done throughout the year. And so as I've noticed there has been this change in prioritizing my sleep, I actually have this incredible Whoop device which measures sleep, stress, recovery, and all the things. And I cannot tell you what a difference it makes. So I was that person that would go to bed at 10ish, 10:30, and then at one point I was waking up at 4:30 to train. And I wasn't really counteracting the fact that my early mornings were having such a depleted effect on, or just such an effect on my day, essentially because I was training early morning. So I thought, oh, I'm waking up well. This is what my body's getting used to. But day by day, I was depleting further my sleep need. And as a result, starting to feel quite burned out. And months later, and I was struggling then to get out of bed, and it started to catch up with me. So by being able to reset your sleep process, so this Whoop device, for example, tells you what time to go to bed, whether you got a quality sleep. So having that bedtime routine is so essential, not scrolling in the half an hour before bed and looking at doing things like, reading 10 pages of book, having that hot shower before bed, having that beautiful wind down process, even things that support your sleep, like using a sleep mask is a game changer. Having magnesium is a big one to support your sleep needs. But there are so many things that are underrated about sleep. And like you said, that badge of honor back in the day when I was working till 1 a.m. and getting up at 5 to take fitness classes, I wore that badge of honor and it burnt me out very, very badly towards the end. And I think as mums, because we're doing the things and we're putting ourselves last, we're trying to, get the house sorted or make lunches or get kids to bed. Our bedtime's going later and later, but then we're getting up earlier and earlier to try and get our exercise needs in and, do all of the things. So what I'd like to say to all women is please, please, please prioritize your sleep over everything else, for your mental health, for your physical health, for your hormones, for your stress levels. Everything is easier. And I think deep down we know this, but it's just something that easily goes by the wayside that we kind of don't give as much attention to as we should.
100%. Sleep and hydration.
Sleep and hydration. Sleep and hydration.
I don't know how many.
That's it.
I don't know how many people I've spoken to that don't barely drink water, or they're like, I didn't drink that much water today, or I just hate drinking water. And I'm like, oh my God, drink it.
Coffees, but I didn't have any water today. Like, oh my gosh, basic functions,
I
sleep
know.
and hydration. You nailed it.
Yeah, I just found that really so fascinating. But I know that there's lots that you have been learning now working with the incredible Dr. Christy.
Oh, yes.
So she's just a phenomenal woman as well. So she is. Her knowledge, her drive, everything is just phenomenal. But as are you. And I just want to thank you for coming on. And really quickly, as I just want to switch gears for a quick second, because it is a Money Mindset Hub podcast, I just want to ask you as well, based on your journey, last question, how has improving your money mindset really helped your journey as a business owner?
So much. It's made a big difference, to be honest, in terms of the way that I run my programs, the way that I position myself in terms of the investment. Once upon a time, I used to, run time for money sort of thing. So I don't look at that anymore. I kind of have that abundance mindset that used to be a place of scarcity, to be honest. It was always sort of wondering when the next amount was going to come in, and being able to change my mindset. And I've been diving into so many of your podcasts too, which I love. And it just opens up so many different areas for me to see where I have progressed over time as well. But I would say, in answer to that, it would be the change from that scarcity to abundance mindset and, looking at an investment with myself once upon a time was time-based, is now it's the rate of return over a lifetime, which is, as a nutritionist, obviously it's a very big change because we've been known to work in clinic hour by hour rate. And that was the way when I set up my business, actually, that's probably the biggest learning for me, was that I never wanted to be the in-clinic nutritionist that traded time for money. It was not the way that I wanted to run. And from the get-go, I never ran, hour by hour kind of consults. And that's something that I'm quite proud of, because that is a result of, I do believe it's highly related to my money mindset and the fact that, I can deliver so much goodness to my clients without having to go by an hour basis.
Yeah, for sure. And that really touches on a really good point too. For anyone listening who is in a similar role, whether it be in nutrition or a physio or whatever it might be, in those kind of roles, yes, you typically do the clinical based work and it is hour by hour and that sort of thing. But this just shows you that you have done it and you've created a business that actually supports your family and your lifestyle. And it doesn't have to be hour and hour. You don't have to create your business in the way that everybody else has done it or the way that it's always been done. You can actually get to create your own rules and ask yourself, well, if there was no rules, how would I do this? What works for me, especially in the stage of life you're in, especially in the stage of children and motherhood that you're in? I think it's a really beautiful reminder that you get to position and craft your business, your offers, your price point, the way that you deliver it in a way that feels right for you and actually is around your kids, because we have to do that. You know, you and I both share the same 15 hours a week max,
Yes.
no kids. That's about to be over because we're about to go into summer holidays. So,
Yes.
RIP 15 hours.
See you later.
But exactly. But with that scarce amount of time to actually switch off the motherhood cap and put on CEO, it makes it really prevalent that you have to prioritize your time and build a business that actually works for you and design it for yourself and your lifestyle. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for that final note, because I think it's so important. I think so many women, especially mothers, forget because they think, oh, but I'm just going to figure this out. No. Ask yourself, how could I do this? How would this work for me? If there was no rules, what would I do? And it has to be fulfilled because, you know, we're all going to learn, but sometimes certain things are going to take more from you or require more of you, I should say. Sometimes, yeah, if your children are sick, you're going to have to give more to them and your business is going to have to take the back seat. And then when they're fit and well and everything's going good and you've got a big project coming up or something launching, like maybe you're launching Nourish again, then that's when you need to put the pedal to the floor and go all in on that. But I think priorities is really, really challenging. And I think it's something you're always learning how to do. But anyway, with that said, Rach, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and your knowledge and just being here and telling us about your story and how women can actually do something about their health, their energy, reducing their stress, not having to be burnt out, because we don't have to be burnt out anymore. So thank you so much. And lastly, where can everyone find you? And of course, it's all going to be linked in the show notes, but where can we find you?
Thank you so much for having me. I've absolutely loved this conversation. You can find me on Instagram, Rach_Jobling_nutritionist. Send me a DM or you could send me an email at hello@rachjobling.com. I would love to hear from you, but thank you again. It's been so lovely to join you today, Carla.
Thank you for coming on. And also, just quick side note before we go, but Rach also has a podcast that is going to be launching soon.
Yes.
Just holding you accountable there.
Thank you. Oh, it's coming.
It's coming. It's coming. So anyway, you can follow Rach on Instagram and you will hear all about the podcast and more of her incredible knowledge that's coming. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, I would absolutely love it if you could please leave me a 5-star review and let me know your thoughts. Remember, everything you desire and deserve is just on the other side of your own resistance. So take that next step.